Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Before we get into the episode, I want to say thank you to this episode's sponsor, Black Wolf. Black Wolf is a men's skincare brand that is solution-focused. If you have razor bumps, acne, oily skin, etc., they have a simple, affordable solution for you. Make sure to check them out at blackwolfnation.com and enjoy the episode. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small, a podcast about brand development, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the modern world. In this episode, I'm joined by CEO and founder of HelloAva, Siqi Mou. Growing up in China, Siqi came to the US to attend Stanford and Harvard. Taking inspiration from a class project, Siqi created HelloAva, an artificial intelligence skincare consultant. Hello, and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today I'm joined by Siqi Mou of HelloAva. Siqi, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I want to start out with your childhood. So where did you grow up, and what was your childhood like?
So I grew up actually overseas. So I grew up in this town called Guangzhou in southern China, and I grew up in an entrepreneurship family, which is kind of one of the reasons that inspired me to start a business later on. I remember that my parents were both really busy, and I was raised by my grandparents, and they are super nurturing, and they're like basically parents to me. They took me to a lot of different places and parks, and then we travel overseas together. So I grew up in a family that's extremely loving, but I almost rarely see my parents. And then my parents didn't take me into their work until I was almost in primary school. So I remember at the year when I was around like eight or nine, like this, I was like in second or third grade. I finally kind of start learning what my parents do, and back then they owned this like an international trading firm that they basically acted as agencies of countries that want to do business with Chinese companies. So they export and import lots of furnitures or goods that are made like candles and like small like goods that are made for home uses or outdoor uses. So I remember going to factories with my parents, sometimes going to trade shows with my parents, and then wondering like, wow, like this is really cool. Like how come my dad brings home all these random like they're not toys, but then at least I can play with. And I felt like it's pretty interesting how these beautifully made goods are like we rarely could access in China because they're usually being exported to overseas markets. But I thought that was kind of like a really interesting how my parents made those products. I didn't know they didn't make it. I thought they made those products back then. I thought they actually used their hands and made those things in like somewhere in the I don't get to see where they made it, but later on I obviously realized that they work with manufacturers to make those. But I when I was a little kid, I thought that they make those candles, they make those umbrellas like themselves, and I was really intrigued by that.
Awesome. So did you have an entrepreneurship mindset growing up? Did you ever sell anything or try to start a business prior to school and HelloAva?
I don't think so, but I do think I have the mindset growing up, and I didn't really sell anything, but I started going to trade shows with my dad when I was in high school. So when like I think we started taking like English lessons when I was like super young. I was like 9 or 10. So by the age of 13, I was already pretty fluent. So like starting from like middle school and high school, I was able to conduct a pretty good like involved conversation with people who do business with my parents. So starting from like middle school, high school, I travel a lot with my parents, and they're very like much like global citizens. So they travel to so many different countries to do trade shows. My dad later on expanded the business considerably, I would say. And then he started he started building his own factory, quite a few other factories in both China and Indonesia and Vietnam. So we had like a lot of presence in and then we like specialized in one field, which is outdoor furniture later on. So we basically stopped like exporting other types of furniture or types of like candles or umbrellas. We only focused on outdoor furniture, and the scale was like much higher, larger now than before. So I remember starting from like when I was like 15, we were doing a lot of trade shows in Germany and in like obviously in the US and then in some other European countries. But there's this big outdoor furniture show that we will always go to in Germany, which was in Cologne, and that always happened right before my birthday. And my birthday is end of August, so it's like a fun thing to do for that trip, and then celebrate my birthday with my parents. So I would go with my dad, and then or my mom sometimes too, and then we'll go to Germany, and then we'll stay. And I remember going to those trade shows, and then people would think that, oh, she's just like hanging out here, and she's just like the daughter of the owner of the business. But then my dad would encourage me to start talking to these people, and then greet them and give them, like give them candies and chocolate, and then also give them a quick introduction of the business, like why we're one of the leading manufacturers in outdoor furniture, what makes us unique, and then look at these beautiful pieces that it's being shown in our showroom. So I was really interested in doing that. I was fascinated by that, and I really enjoyed doing that myself, actually. And I remember like a lot of the people, when they talked to me, they were like, so who are you? They're like you're this like teenager. But then I told them a little bit about my background. That was like when I was only like 14, 15, but I was like,
wow.
I thought I was actually doing a pretty good job, like selling the vision of the company. And then they all wanted to stay later and talk to my parents and talk to the employees at his firm. And, I felt like I wasn't really involved in selling directly, but I think I probably helped close some of those deals for my dad because they talked to me. And then when the showroom got super busy, I was like, I don't mind giving a hand. So I kind of just, kind of like approach those people and then start chatting with them and telling them a little bit about the company, and then lead them to to the people who can actually close deals. So that was kind of like an early kind of introduction to entrepreneurship. And then later on, I also, ran for the student government at our high school. And then I got, it was, and I think I got elected to be the president of our student government. But I think all of those presentation skills and how to sell and how to convince people kind of started when I was going to shows with my parents, really. And that has really made a big difference and impact later on in my life.
For sure. That's such an amazing experience. So where did you go on to study then in college?
So after high school, I made a decision to come to the States and then study here. And because of my experience running the student government back in high school, and also having a lot of very unique experience as a pianist. So I grew up as playing the piano competitively, like doing all these competitions. So I got some good awards from that experience. I was pretty lucky because my parents are very gave me all these opportunities when I was young, and then let me decide which extracurricular I was interested in. And eventually I did like all kinds of things like ballet, piano, violin, like calligraphy, so like painting, so many things. But then I ended up like going with piano because I felt like that was something I feel passionate about, and I'm good at it. Like painting, I was so bad at it. I didn't really enjoy failing all the time. So I like to do things that I felt like I could succeed in. So I ended up going piano, and I was like, got to a point where I was pretty good, and then I was like winning all these awards and competitions, and also kind of I went through like these it's a system where you can do like grades 1 to 10, and I did like all the way to the grade 10. And I also did this exam that's conducted by the Royal Academy, Music Academy in England. So I did all of that stuff and I did pretty well. So then I started doing more performance and I gave concerts and stuff. So because of the talent, like the musical talents and also some of these extracurricular work especially as a student president of the student government, I was pretty lucky and I got into Stanford. So I that's where I did my college, and I had a whole exploration of what I think I would be interested in doing. I was really interested in computer science. I was interested in music. I was also interested in obviously economics and business because I grew up kind of like observing how my parents do business. So I end up choosing I end up choosing economics as my major, and then I minored in music, and also I minored in computer science. So that's like kind of what I did at Stanford. And then for a long time, I thought I was gonna go into maybe doing something in the intersection of music and business. So I interned at Warner Brothers for the first job I had right before junior year, which was interesting but not very exciting. I felt like it was kind of slow, the work, and then it didn't really give me the kind of strong. I didn't feel challenged in a way. It's almost too corporate. And then the summer after, I worked in JP Morgan in LA, which handles a lot of their entertainment clients, entertainment type of business. And I thought that was interesting, but I didn't really want to stay in LA. I think I spent a long time in California, both during college and all these internships. So by senior year in college, I made a decision that I want to go to the East Coast. I want to go to New York and I want to work in finance. And that's how I started my first job after college. And I worked at Morgan Stanley for a couple of years after that.
Okay. So prior to HelloAva, what kind of jobs were you working then? You said this previous job that you just said. Did you have any other jobs besides that?
Yeah. So that gives a good segment to kind of my journey in professional life after college. I think HelloAva is a little bit of, I would say, off chart type of pursuit. I didn't think that I was gonna become an entrepreneur, even though you saw in my earlier life that I have all these interest in passionate entrepreneurship as the daughter of an entrepreneur family. But I didn't actually think that I will become an entrepreneur because I'm actually pretty risk averse, I would say, deep down. I think what I have always been trying to do in my life, at least in my past 10 years as a professional, I was always kind of going for the big names and then the prestigious institutions, trying to build up my resume, which I guess it is the right thing to do if you're early in your career because you want to build up your resume. But I wasn't really sure if that's what I wanted. I just was doing it because it sounds like the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. So the first job I did after college, I knew that I thought finance was interesting because of my experience working in LA from JP Morgan. So I decided to stay in finance, and I was an economics major. So that was one of the best jobs you could get as an economics major. So I worked at Morgan Stanley in New York, covering central banks and sovereign wealth funds for almost 3 years. And I actually really, really loved the job. And then can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, I really loved the job, and I learned so much, and I built a lot of great relationships with my clients, who are all these central bankers from around the world, because they are, they're essentially the monetary policy makers of their country. Mm-hmm. And me growing up kind of as an international myself, I felt like I could build out this, I really had a lot of similar experience with these clients. So it was really fun for me to be helping them with their trades in the U.S. Treasury markets or U.S. agency markets. So,
Yeah.
and I love macroeconomics policy, because that was actually one of the area that I did the best when I was studying economics. So this is like a perfect combination. And I really enjoyed doing it. I didn't mind the bad. I mean, obviously, all investment banking jobs have bad hours. I didn't mind it because I was having so much fun, and I was kind of on this career high.
Mm-hmm.
And then like after that, I know that like I was really interested in doing macro policy, and then I was very good at economics policy, so I decided to study further in this. And I always know that I wanted to go back to school, maybe to get an advanced degree. And my parents want me to do that as well. They're encouraging me to do so. I think that's kind of like comes down to the Chinese parents type of mentality. They want you to,
Yeah.
get all the degrees. But I was interested in doing so myself. So after being in investment banking for a couple of years, I also wanted to take a little bit of break. So I decided to go back to school. So what I did was actually this really interesting program where I got to go to two schools for two degrees, all within 3 years.
Wow.
And then so I did a master in public policy at Harvard Kennedy School, and then I also got an MBA from Stanford. And the reason I was able to do that was because these two schools had an agreement of this joint degree they can do. So I really want to study more policy, because that wasn't really in the focus for my undergraduate. So, and then after my job at, covering these sovereign wealth funds and central bankers, I felt really intrigued by this world. So I wanted to learn more about economic policy making. So that's why I went to the Kennedy School at Harvard to study more on the public policy stuff. And then obviously I'm also a businesswoman, so I wanted to do an MBA. I felt like that will open my doors to a lot more opportunities in the future, not just finance. So my parents are really want me to do an MBA as well, because like if one day I do take care of the family business, my parents feel like an MBA will be really helpful in learning like just a holistic view of how to do business and
For sure.
how to close deals. So I did the MBA at Stanford, and I was very happy to be back in California after spending a couple of years in New York, and back to where I had my undergraduate. Also beautiful weather to do the MBA. So and then in between, obviously, I also did a few like finance related jobs. So I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and that was one of the internships I did as when I was in Kennedy School at Harvard. And it was really interesting because, like, I've always been on the private side of the finance world, and this is the first time I'm kind of on the public service side. And when I was at the Federal Reserve, I was focused on regulation and also supervision of financial firms. So I actually got to work with many investment banks, which is the side I came from, to understand, like, to give them like kind of guidance on how to conduct business so that we won't go into the big problem we had back in 2008 again. And that was really interesting for me to understand how like financial regulation works. And then that also is like kind of in the intersection of policy making and financial markets. And then I also worked in PIMCO, which is like a huge mutual fund. And that was really great as well. And then another experience I had before HelloAva was I actually moved to Indonesia and then worked in Bloomberg Television as a news anchor covering financial news. And then all of these I will categorize them as like finance related work, even though the broadcasting job is more kind of in the field of journalism. I still was covering mainly financial news. So I felt it wasn't that different from me talking about markets news to my clients when I was Morgan Stanley. So all of that is like all in the finance world. So I never really think that I was going to go work in a beauty company or start a beauty company.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and that's such an amazing journey. So in 2016, HelloAva was established. What inspired you to develop this?
Yeah, so So that kind of has to go back to my journey as an MBA student. So
Okay.
when I was back at Stanford, I still at this point I wasn't really sure whether I would do entrepreneurship, because in between my first and second year during MBA, I went back to finance again. I worked at PIMCO, as I said earlier. So that was kind of like a pretty, set journey for me, and I could go back to just working a big macro fund, and that felt like pretty, safe and also pretty good life. You make like decent amount of money. But then like in my second year during MBA, there are a lot of my classmates are taking these classes in school, called like Startup Garage or Lean Launchpad, like all of these classes that basically tells you or gives you the exercise of how to become a founder, and it gives you the toolkits you need to test out ideas and prove product market fit, and then eventually being able to launch a business. I came into one of these classes not really knowing like what that was gonna do to me, right? But then this class, the reason I wanted to take it is because I know it's very competitive. You need to have a technical team member in order to apply, and they only take 8 teams out of like hundreds of applications. So now I was like, well, okay, if everyone wants to take this class, it must be good. And that's kind of like how I pick things in the past, like which sometimes is probably not the right approach, but I always look at what other people are trying to do. If something is competitive, it's hard to get it, then it must be good. So sometimes I challenge myself to do those things, and if I succeed, I become really happy to do it. But I make choices sometimes based on this, and which oftentimes might not be the right choice. But sometimes it's the right choice, because if everyone wants it, usually you're not too far from like what is the right thing to do. Anyway, so I still sometimes doubt my own philosophy of making choices in life using this benchmark, but that was kind of how I decided that, oh, let me try this class too if everyone is trying to get it. And then I applied, and then with one of my good friends in business school, and then we recruited someone from the chemical engineering department who was the technical member, and someone from the medical school. And then we didn't really have a clear idea of what we want to do, but all of us kind of connected on this big pain point we have, which is the beauty market, especially. So we have like 3 girls and four people in total. We have 3 girls. And then we all, at some point in our life, has struggled with our skin, because we were trying all these products and it either doesn't work or it comes from friends' recommendations. And when we start using it, it didn't work well because their skin is different from ours when you take a recommendation from a friend. Yeah. And so we don't really have like a firm idea, but we have a big pain point we're trying to solve, which is this not knowing what's the right product for ourselves to use. So then we're like, okay, we're going to just apply to the class with this idea, but we don't really have an idea. So how are we going to present it? But we presented our pain point and what are the solutions in the market. And we went through like 2 rounds of interview. I remember I was actually in Cambridge at that point because I was doing the joint degree. Yeah. So I did my interview. Usually you're supposed to do it in person with the professors, but I did my interview because I was at Harvard that semester. I did my interview in Cambridge through Zoom. Nowadays it seems so normal, but back then I remember it was like such a big deal. Like I had to like email my professors many times, like, I'm so sorry I couldn't do this in person because I'm like not on campus this semester, and I had to explain to them why that was the case. And then we went through like 2 rounds of interviews. We got into this class. We're so happy. Wow. And during this class, we had just an eye-opening experience. It was transformational, truly. We almost did not. The classroom setting was very, it was very like kind of supplemental to what you actually need to do. Like you are supposed to go outside and talk to many, many people. Because if you just stay in a classroom or stay in your own home and trying to think like, oh, what is this idea? How can I solve this problem? You're never really going to get anywhere. This whole idea is that you need to go out and talk to people. So in the class, we have an assignment of talking to at least 5 to 10 people a week. And you have to conduct an interview around at least 10 minutes. And that was like a lot of work because we were doing at least 4 or 5 other classes at the same time. And then to be able to spare the time to go outside and talk to random people on the street and to do this 10 times a week, it's crazy. A lot, right?
Yeah.
So, but then we still managed to do that. And then we realized through these interviews that it was actually really interesting. And it was the finding from these interviews were fascinating and honestly like much bigger than what we have thought about. And we realized that it confirmed these people, over 90% of the people we talked to have confirmed our belief that they don't really know what to use for their face. And they're constantly going through this trial and error process in order to find out what works for them. And whenever they get recommendations from friends for skincare products, it oftentimes doesn't work well because their friends might have a different skin type than theirs.
Yeah,
so then true. We're like, wait, this exactly confirms our belief and what we like struggle with as teenagers, especially when we had acne and all these issues when we were younger. Then we're like, okay, there's something here that we should do. And what is the solution? How can we build it to solve this problem? And that's kind of where we start thinking about what to do, what to build and how to build it.
Okay, so once you had the idea, was anyone in your group experienced in coding, or how did you get the website launched and the actual consultations and pursuing the actual company? How did that get going? Did you guys have experience?
Yeah, so the class was like a good introduction to how to start a company, but then obviously everyone in our group, had like different agendas. For example, one of the medical students, she still has like 2 or 3 more years of schooling. And then the other chemical engineering person has 5 more years as a PhD. So it's hard to be able to build a team with your original, the teammates that you had when you did this class. The class was more like almost, I call it a simulation of what it feels like to start a company. But it becomes very apparent to me that it proves something that we've never thought about. It proves something that was a huge business opportunity here, which can gives me the toolkits if I want to keep pursuing this. And none of us are sure at that point whether we want to pursue this full time, but at least it gives me an idea of if I want to pursue this, what are the testing, what are the prospective clients or clientele that I need to be going after.
Yeah.
So what I did was that, I had 2 choices at that point. I could go back to finance, and I had a few full-time offers from big firms, or I could try this and then see if it works out. I was like kind of struggling, big time. I wasn't sure what to do, and I had a lot of soul searching moments. I was 2 months away from graduating from business school. I had a crisis time, actually. I almost never shared this, but I think you asked great questions and that kind of got me to talk about this. But I had a crisis time. I'm like, what do I do at this point? I'm struggling big time. Another thing is I was planning my wedding because I was getting married that summer in August. And I also had to finish a thesis for Kennedy School. I had this... So I actually had a great mentor, and also my thesis advisor was Professor Larry Summers, who was the Treasury, Secretary of Treasury for Bill Clinton, and also it was the Harvard president many years ago. So he's obviously very high profile, and I couldn't, I didn't want to disappoint him. Like I obviously want to do a great job because leverage summers is like so hard to get. Like I like try so hard, hustle like big time to get him as my advisor. So I want to do a good job. So I didn't really have a lot of time to think about my career, but I was like kind of constantly going through the struggle. Like, what should I do? Like, I kind of want to do something about this entrepreneurial journey, but is this the right time, or should I go back to finance because that seems like more comfortable and easy? So I really struggle a lot like during those days, not sure what's the right thing to do. And I kind of look back on my life choices I've made in the first 7 years of professional life. I felt like I've always I've always been going for the safe choices, as I said earlier, kind of going for the big names and what's prestigious. And if I go back to finance, I'll probably end up joining one of those big prestigious firms again. And it just felt like a pattern that's repeating itself. And I just didn't know if that's the right thing to do. And I was having all these self-doubts. And on the other hand, I was like, we prepared a beautiful deck for this idea coming from the class. And we start getting a lot of meetings, and then these are not meetings that I'm like trying to get myself. These are meetings just like random venture capitalists is sitting in our class, and they're like, they saw what we presented. They're like, wait, this is interesting. There could be a business here. And they invited us to their office to present again.
Wow.
So then we're like, so then I was like, wait, maybe I should just pursue this if we can raise some capital, without me taking too much financial risk. And I kind of was like still open-minded about different choices in life. So what I did is I started presenting this idea to them, and right before graduating, and then we actually pretty lucky, we got some funding. We got actually quite significant amount of funding without with basically a piece of PowerPoint and a great team. And then we then at that point, obviously people, if they give you funding, their first requirement is that you have to do this full time. You cannot do this part time. So at that point, it helped me make the decision like, okay, now if some investors are betting on us, if they believe in an idea, then why shouldn't I believe in it? And why shouldn't I give it a try? So it becomes clear at that point, like I should give this a try. And if it fails, then that's fine. I can still go back to finance. And if it doesn't, then it's great. So I decided that I'm going to tell all of these companies I'm not going, and I'm going to work on this beauty idea. And I remember when they were asking me, like, where are you going? Like, why are you not joining us? They were probably expecting me to tell them, and I answered that I'm going to one of the competitors. I'm going to but I'm like, I told them I'm going to actually start a company. And they asked me, what's the company you're going to start? I told them this idea. Everyone was like, what? They were so surprised because it's so irrelevant and so different from what I used to do.
That's awesome. So at this time, was it only you, or did you have someone else, like a partner, building along with you?
So at that point I had two partners. One of them is a business school classmate, and the other person I got introduced later. And then we start kind of building on the initial version of HelloAva, which wasn't actually what you see today. It's just a text message bot where it gives you this idea. And that kind of goes back to the philosophy of this Lean Launchpad class, which is about how do you test out an idea using an MVP, right? Like the minimal viable product, so that you don't have to go fully in, and then you can use a proxy to test out like an idea, to understand if there's like a certain level of product market fit before you invest more money and more effort into it. And that's actually such a great philosophy in building technology startups. It's so embedded in everything we do now. It's so important. I think you always want to find like what is a good MVP for this bigger concept that you're trying to do. How can we test it? So you want to almost break that big goal into smaller steps in order to understand like is this new feature you're trying to build, does it actually resonate with the clients before you're building it? So what we did as a proxy of what we're trying to do is this text message bot, which allows customers to be able to text back and forth with our bot, and then to get recommendations on what works for them. And the idea is that, people constantly text their friends, right? They're texting their friends about, like, hey, what's the best moisturizer? What do you use for eye cream? But again, their friends might give them a wrong choice because their friends' skin is different, and whatever works for their friend might not work for us. So how can we mimic this experience of talking to a good friend, but then actually give them accurate recommendations? So we built out this spa experience where it goes through a few questions with the customers and then kind of finalize a set of regimen recommendations for them. And it feels almost like you're texting a friend or texting your personal dermatologist, and then you get recommendations of what works for you. And that product was I would say it's very simple and it's very easy to use, but it worked really well. People love it, like how simple it is. And then it became it's very obvious in the early days. It was very popular. So those feedback gives us great insight into what is the final or like the next iteration of product we're trying to build. What is that, right? So and then around this time that we also got introduced to TechCrunch. So we I met like their editor-in-chief, and then I was I think we got pretty lucky in terms of getting selected to launch our company on TechCrunch.
Yeah, that's huge.
And they only selected like around 18 companies, that cohort. So we did this big launch on Disrupt New York on the stage, and then we launched at TechCrunch, and that was still the first iteration of product. But because of the TechCrunch exposure and the PR exposure, we got to have just a lot of users, and people start like we're starting to see word of mouth growth, and then starting to get a lot of new users trying our service. And then we, based on these new first iteration of and first interviews of these users, we start to learn like what do they want and how can we build a 2.0 product that's richer and better than what is the text message bot that we're offering to the market.
Okay, so when a customer comes on and signs up for a consultation, can they order products directly through you guys and maybe drop ship from there? Or do you guys give them advice and they go shop for themselves? Or how does that process go?
So that's a great question, because we have gone through all of this you mentioned. So the first iteration, the platform is, like, as I said, a simple text message bot, and then start recommended products, and then link you to links and from like all these retailers, and then you can buy there. We realized from the customers' feedback that this is not quite a good experience. They felt like it was very, if we recommend 5 products, they will get 5 different links, and it feels like they might not end up buying it because they're landed on 5 different retailers, and then it's the experience isn't really good. The conversion might not really happen. Mm-hmm. So, and also from these interviews, we realized that customers feel like text message wise easy and great to use, but it's very limited. There's not beautiful visual. You can't really see these products well. It's like very difficult to do. So then we're like, okay, maybe we will do, maybe we'll build this into a richer experience with beautiful colors and visuals on the website, on a mobile web app, so that it gives us the ability to offer much richer visuals and much richer experience. So that's when we start building out the web application, which takes the kind of the core flow of what the text message is offering, but then also can offer a lot of other things, like you can schedule a consultation with clients, and also you can see like what is being recommended to you, and you can chat with the skin advisors real time. And then so we built that, and that was launched in 2018.
Okay.
And that got also just incredible feedback. And then we are seeing like just huge adoption. So I think our user, when we launched on TechCrunch, we have like less than 1,000 users. And then by like 2018, which is only a few months after, we are at around, I think within a couple months, we're at around almost 50,000 users.
Wow.
So
That's
that was
amazing.
huge growth.
Yeah.
And then now we're at almost 130,000 users. So it's obviously a lot higher than where it was before. But that was after we started doing like marketing and growth hacking and all that stuff. But you're seeing like amazing adoption from just like the early days when you had no ads and no like, just complete word of mouth, and then you realize there's something unique you're offering here. So
yeah, continue.
Yeah, so then so then at that point we're still kind of doing the consult on text message, and then doing the website for the quiz, and then connect the customers to a skin advisor for a little more consult. And then after that, you can get links of products that you can buy, but then you get directed out of the website to buy them. And then we realized that's like a bad experience, because a lot of the customers first of all, we cannot track whether they're buying it, and two, like they think that having 5 links for 5 different products, it doesn't really help with conversion, and people might just drop after that. So what we decided is that it's probably time that we can potentially sell them these products directly. And we talked to many of our users. We asked them if at that point we can just handle the purchase for you as well, would you actually purchase them, or would you still like prefer to get directed to outside links? And then the answer is almost unanimous to, and they're all saying that we wanted to, if you're telling me something, I want to know where to buy, and I want to buy it right there. So we decided that we're going to use this data we collected about how many people are landing on these pages, and how many of them are potentially trying to buy this product, but then they might not end up buying for all these reasons. But then these are great data we can show to the brand directly. And then they know how many unmet demand there is, so that they can maybe work with us directly. So that's what we did. And that, obviously took a huge amount of time and effort, but we pull out this data, people landing on it, showing like intent to purchase. And then we went straight to the brands and tell them like, look, these are how much you're missing on the potential purchase and sales. Do you want to work with us directly? And then because of the great data we showed, we got to close a lot of brand partners, and we actually, and then during the same, like around the same time, we also got this award from L'Oreal, who gave us, they like awarded 3 women to be their like Women in Digital Awards, and we were one of the 3 winners that year. Wow. So that gave us the opportunity to work with L'Oreal, a lot of their brands, and also with similar kind of companies, their competitors, and some smaller, younger brands who are just up and coming in the beauty world. So like I think closed almost in the first batch of people, we closed around 50 brands that we start working with, and then at this point we have like over almost like 400 brands that we work with. But at that point, it's a big achievement to close all these brands who, we weren't sure before whether they will want to work with us directly. So that was, and then we put them on the platform, and then we start selling the products, and then we start offering a direct channel to the customers so then they can buy directly there.
Okay. So being driven by AI, Where does human interaction come in with the process for the customer actually taking the quizzes or the consultations?
Yes. So after they finish the questionnaire, they will get connected to a skin advisor who will what the skin advisor does is that she will validate what is being recommended by the computer, and if it's like looks all good, she will basically approve everything. If it doesn't look good, she will be able to modify the choices for the customer, and then all these modifications are also being recorded by the machine so that the machine can learn better over time from the expert's input and then become smarter. So that's like a supervised learning process that's being built in on the back end. And then after it's being finalized and approved and checked by this human advisor, then it gets sent to the customers, and then the customer can view her finalized choices of products that's being recommended to her. And then after she starts using the products, she can also submit feedback of how well the products are working on her skin. And then when she's submitting these feedback, it actually helps the engine to become smarter too, because the engine knows exactly who she is, like all the attributes about her skin type and skin needs and her ethnicity, her, everything, like her photo and her concerns and her age group, like everything about her. So then the engine will understand, like, okay, this product works really well for this person, and this person has all these attributes and based on her questionnaire. So then it also will know if there's a future person who comes in with the same exact attributes or similar attributes as the previous person, then the engine will know like what products will work well because they are essentially being categorized as the same person. So then that will solve the problem of what we encountered before, which is, getting recommendation from friends might not always work because your friends are different. But if your friend is the same as you based on this collection of data points, then that becomes very valuable advice, right? So, and you can't really do that as a human because we don't really know how is our friend's skin. But then the computer allows us to do this in a way that's much more efficient and scalable because it can immediately identify which two people are the same based on the attributes it collects.
Okay. So how do you retain customers after, say, they completed the quiz and the order with you guys? How do you retain them to come back and maybe make another recommendation?
Yeah, so the connection they build with the skin advisors are permanent. It's always going to be there, and then it doesn't go away, and it's going to stay on their text message forever unless they delete it. But usually people like to stay in touch, so they can they can like speak, like consult again with the customers. Sorry, they can consult again with their expert advisor, and then they can also, whenever they get like an acne or some kind of sensitivity reaction, they can always snap a photo and send to us. So that connection is there for a long time if they want to keep taking advantage of it. And then at the same time, we push reminder text message and emails to remind them to get their skin checked again, or remind them to refill their products. And then we offer them a 10% discount when they're refilling the same products again if they've already purchased something with us before. So because of these efforts that we've made, we're seeing almost a 40% repurchasing rate. So that percentage is actually increasing during COVID-19. I think on average we're seeing around 40%, and then last quarter it was at 50%. So half of the people who use our service will come back and purchase again, which I think it shows this premise and then the hypothesis we have, which is people's skin are constantly changing. Whatever you need when you're 12 is very different from what you need when you're 30. So and seasonally your skin is reacting differently as well. So you always potentially need different products. So you come back again to purchase new product, get new advice, and get your skin kind of checked.
That's awesome. So, if you could share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned along the way or regret, what would that be?
I've shared this with other younger like entrepreneurs, like in other talks or forums.
Hmm.
I think one of the quotes that really inspired me was actually from John Lewis, who just recently passed, and a great activist, very inspirational icon.
Yeah.
Is he said, I think during the war, I think he said something which actually applies great to starting a technology company. Ironically, he said, "If not us, then who? If not now, then when?" Um,
Hmm.
it's a really, I mean, back then it was about like a revolution or act, like something they're trying to start. But I actually think it applies really well to starting a company. Is um starting a company is extremely hard, right? And like
Hmm.
for me, when I observed how my parents worked tirelessly, almost didn't spend any time with me, like when I was young, is and they built companies, and then the odds are always against you because most of the companies fail. So, and then if you're constantly thinking about that, no one will really go out and start companies because it's thousands of millions of things could go wrong.
Yeah.
But if you're constantly having self-doubts, and you don't really do anything about these great ideas you might have, then it will never go anywhere. So I think being able to take a chance on yourself and actually do something about it is one of those things. I think it's worth doing at some point in your life. And we
Hmm.
have a long life usually, like, right, like life expectancy in the like in our current modern world has been much high, like longer than like before World War II. So if you have a life that could potentially last, let's say, like 100 years, then I think it's worth at some point in your life to do something that's entrepreneurial, even if it could lead to failure.
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of like my regret, is that I didn't really start a company early enough. I almost felt like I could have done this like when I was right after college, but I didn't do it.
Hmm.
Because I kind of decided to go for those prestigious names and then trying to build up my resume, which might be the right thing to do. Like, but I don't know. Like, maybe it's wrong. So you never know unless you actually try it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the first part of his quote, which is, "If not now, then when?" Right? If you keep waiting, you will never really get anywhere because you will not start this thing.
Hmm.
And then the second part is, "If not us, then when? And then who?" Which is kind of like about you, about believing in yourself and being able to take that uncomfortable step out and then take a chance on yourself. I
Hmm.
think oftentimes we felt like, "Oh, I'm not ready yet. I'm not, and that's kind of what goes to everything about life. Like, are you ready to get married? Are you ready to having a kid? Are you ready to, go back to school again? Are you ready to take a step forward?" It like oftentimes your answer will be, "I'm not ready yet," and
Hmm.
that's oftentimes like might be wrong because you're never going to be ready for anything. Like
Yeah.
I just gave birth to a baby back in February, and I remember like when I was like thinking about whether I'm ready to become a mom, my answer is absolutely no, right? But I felt like if I don't do it, like I'm gonna miss the good time to become a mom, because when I'm like 40 or 50 again, I can't even have children. So like
Yeah.
life always goes to, like, that's kind of thing. Like life always, it's like a trick that life is playing on you. It's like if you keep waiting there, it's never gonna, like, nothing is gonna ever happen. So you kind of have to make these decisions when you're not quite ready yet. So that's kind of like what I was saying is, you have to just take a chance sometimes on yourself, and be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and step that like take that step out so that um you can you can try something. And you oftentimes, even though we all have self-doubts and we're not ready, we
Hmm.
feel we might
it might be as well be us. It might as well be you. And
Yeah.
you never know until you actually try it. So that's kind of like my advice is take a chance on yourself. And if you have an idea, try it and do something about it, execute on it, because everyone can have an idea, but only the people who actually try it and do it gets to be successful.
For sure. Well, Siqi, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out HelloAva at helloava.co.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for listening to this episode of Starting Small. If you would, leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. Also, follow Starting Small Pod on social platforms to keep up to date on future guests.